many brand owners, achieving profitable, predictable, and sustainable growth feels nearly impossible. This challenge stems not just from rising ad costs, but mainly from the unsustainable approach many embrace. That's where the DMA Growth Thesis comes in. It's the foundation of everything we do. Our growth thesis outlines the essential approach e-commerce brands need to adopt for exponential growth in excruciating detail. But before we get started, who am I and why am I qualified to tell you all this information? My name is Iradia and I'm the founder of DMA, which is a growth consulting and management firm for e-commerce and direct-to-consumer brands. At DMA, we simply help e-commerce brand owners scale their e-commerce brands to multiple 7 figures or 8 figures a year by implementing our growth infrastructure into their businesses and managing it on their behalf. In other words, we partner with brand owners and take care of the marketing and sales department within their business to make it inevitable for them not to achieve profitable, predictable, and sustainable growth with their brands. Cool. If you're watching this training at this point, I feel like you are the right person that we made this training for. Now, the next section is the DMA Growth Thesis. And this is a strategic approach for driving profitable, predictable, and sustainable growth in the e-commerce space. Now, this is the way we see the e-commerce space, and this is the way we believe an e-commerce brand should be scaled. Now, this is proven. It's not just our theory or our beliefs or what we think should be done. No, this is actually been proven, and this is actually the best way to scale your e-commerce brand. So that's it. Let's just get into it. Now, the reality is all the traditional marketing agencies that have approached you and have been pitching you are all focused on selling you a higher ROAS, return on ad spend on one given platform. One agency selling you a 5x ROAS on TikTok, then the week after you have another agency selling you a 15x ROAS on Facebook or Meta, right? They are missing the whole point of marketing, right? All these beginners fail to understand that real business growth goes way beyond a single metric, ROAS, on a single platform, Facebook, right? In fact, growth can even take place outside of these ad platforms, right? But we're not gonna touch on that today, right? Because obviously there's retail stores, saying there's obviously physical locations where you can actually sell product to, right? But we're not talking about that today, right? I've come to the conclusion that the reason all the traditional marketing agencies are so fixated on ROAS is because it's the only thing they know and understand. Some even struggle to deliver on the ROAS that they promised you, but that's a different story for another day. I know some of you guys felt that one. Now, the truth is, you can take your brand to your first $1 million or make a few more faster if you already made your first $1 million, obviously, by understanding what I'm about to show you. Although ROAS, return on ad spend, is one of the metrics you should be paying attention to when it comes to the execution of paid acquisition or paid ads, it's not the key to the growth you're looking for. The metric you should be paying the most attention to and optimizing to achieve exponential growth is your lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio. LTCM to CAC ratio. As long as the ratio is at least 3-to-1, your e-commerce brand is in a great position to grow. LTCM, aka lifetime contribution margin, equals the total amount of contribution margin generated by the average customer. CAC equals the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer. Now, you might be like, that's not what CAC means. CAC means customer acquisition cost, right? That's what you think, right? In the e-commerce space, there's no such thing as CAC. And I'll prove it to you later on in this training. Basically, in 10 to 15 minutes, I'll go through an example and I'll break down exactly why CAC does not exist in the e-commerce space. Customer acquisition cost, it does not exist in the e-commerce space, right? So in the e-commerce space, CAC, if you want to know the definition of CAC in the e-commerce space, CAC is the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer. Now, as I said, this might not make sense right now, right? By the end of this section, in 10 to 15 minutes time, I'll go through an example explaining why CAC doesn't actually exist in the e-commerce space. Like customer acquisition cost. Customer acquisition cost doesn't exist. I'll go through an example. But the main two things you need to learn, the main things you need to get right now is in the e-commerce space, The number one metric when it comes to the growth of your business is the lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio. That's the number one metric in the e-commerce space, right? Now, moving on. I know you've probably heard marketing experts define CAC as customer acquisition cost, but this doesn't apply in the e-commerce or direct-to-consumer space, and I'll prove it to you later in this training. For now, just remember that at IDMA, CAC is the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer. Your lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is the most important metric when it comes to any function related to the growth of your e-commerce brand. This is because as growth marketers or brand owners, our goal is to make sure that the contribution margin generated throughout the entire relationship you have with your average customer is higher than the total marketing spend required to attain the lifetime contribution margin in the first place, right? Of the average customer in the first place, right? So, and this is again going on to the point I made earlier. CAC does not mean customer acquisition cost in e-com. That doesn't exist. There's no such thing as CAC in e-com. And I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to that later in this training. But that's it. Our number one function, I'll say that again, our number one function is to make sure that the contribution margin generated throughout the entire relationship you have with your average customer is much higher than the total marketing spend required to attain the lifetime contribution margin generated by your average customer. That's it. Your lifetime contribution margin has to be higher than the total marketing spend to generate the sales to even realize that contribution margin in the first place. That's it. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll go through the example in a second. I'll go through a very easy example. Like mathematical calculation, you're going to see it visually. Obviously, sometimes when you see the words, you might not fully grasp it. We're going to go through an example in 10 to 15 minutes, right? So stay with me, all right? This metric helps determine the long-term profitability and sustainability of your business by comparing the lifetime contribution margin generated by the average customer with the total marketing spend required to attain the lifetime contribution margin of the average customer, which is your CAC, right? Even though CAC technically in the e-commerce space doesn't exist, right? But we're gonna stick with that for now. A high lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio indicates that you are making more money from each customer than you are spending to make that money, which is a good position to be in if your objective is business growth. I'm gonna say that again. A high lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio indicates that you are making more money from each customer than you are spending to make that money in the first place, which is a good position to be in if your objective is business growth. ROAS, return on ad spend, on the other hand, is simply a metric used to judge the immediate effectiveness of your paid advertising efforts. ROAS does not take into account all the other costs associated with making a sale. For example, your COGS, cost of goods sold, or fulfillment and shipping costs. ROAS does not take that into account whatsoever. So if it does not take that into account, then it can't tell you how profitable your business is. Then it shouldn't be the number one metric you look at, or you look for, or you try to optimize, right? You should pay attention to it, but it shouldn't be the number one metric. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio takes costs like COGS, cost of goods sold, and fulfillment costs into consideration, which makes it a much more accurate metric to gauge your e-commerce brand's growth and provides you with a more holistic view of your e-commerce brand's financial health. In other words, ROAS is a dead metric. You should not be focusing on ROAS. You should be focusing on lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio. That's the golden metric, right? That's the star metric. That's the North Star, right? Cool. Moving on. Before we get into the ROAS approach versus healthy lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio approach, there's one thing I thought about while I was reading and checking this whole training, and I think now would be the right time to mention it. Now, I know there might be a very small minority of brand owners that might be considering or thinking about using organic content to scale their e-commerce brand. So I want to quickly address this. Posting organic content consistently on social platforms is probably one of the best things you could do to establish your e-commerce brand as an authority in your industry. This perceived authority will lead to increased credibility and social proof. And this increased credibility and social proof will lead to more organic sales for your e-commerce brands. But here's why you shouldn't even be thinking about relying solely on content marketing to scale your e-commerce brand. Lack of predictability. Posting organic content does not guarantee you eyeballs or impressions. You might make a post, go viral, make a ton of sales one day, but the very next day you could make a post that completely flops, doesn't get any traction whatsoever, which means you make no sales. So one day you could make 1,000, millions of sales. Great, amazing. Today we made a lot of money. And then the next day you make a post, gets no traction, doesn't go viral, and you make 0 sales. In business, one thing that you have to try and make sure you have is predictability. You can't have peaks and troughs. When you have peaks and troughs, your business is unstable. You can't make decisions for the long term because you're thinking about tomorrow. Or what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow? You can't think long term. So you need predictability. But we're not going to get into that, right? Now, paid acquisition or paid ads gives us the consistency and predictability that we need to scale your e-commerce brand. Why? Well, because as long as you're willing to pay ad platforms, we will get access to the eyeballs or attentions of our target audience every single day of the week. So you don't have this whole, you create a piece of content that goes viral, get all sales, and then post another piece of content tomorrow and get no traction, doesn't go viral, and get no sales. You don't have that. As long as you're willing to pay an ad platform, you will always get attention. Now, there are other things that come into play because obviously you can't just pay Meta and think that, I'm going to get sales. It doesn't work like that, right? So let's continue. Now, the only other I even said it here, the only other factors that may affect our likelihood of success with an e-commerce brand are things like maybe our ads, products, if we have good products, obviously, right? Customer service, etc., etc., etc. But these are things that are within our control, right? These are factors that are under our control. Now, do not make the mistake of thinking you can just rely on content marketing alone to scale your e-commerce brand, right? It just does that alone doesn't work, right? Now, what we recommend at IDMA is to leverage both methods of customer acquisition. You should be doing content marketing for the long-term benefits that it provides, as well as investing in paid acquisition to generate consistent sales for your e-commerce brand. You should be doing both, if anything. If you rely on organic content, you won't get the predictability you need to scale your business because you'll be thinking about tomorrow, and you shouldn't be thinking about tomorrow in business, right? You should be thinking long-term, right? So invest in both. So I just want to quickly mention that right now because I know some of you might be thinking, wow, I can just post organically and go viral on TikTok and that on Instagram Reels. If you wanna predictability, by all means, go ahead. It works for some brands, but most business owners want predictability. They don't want to have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So that's that. Now, let's break down the difference between optimizing for ROAS versus optimizing for healthy lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, even further with the visuals, right? Now, or in other words, the difference between what traditional marketing agencies tell brand owners they should do versus what brand owners should actually do, right? So let's get into it. So let's start with optimizing for ROAS, the first thing, right? So that's the first approach that most traditional agencies will tell you this is what you need to do. Let's go through it. Let's go back to basics for a second. To scale your business, you need attention, right? And you also need to convert as much of that attention as possible, right? This is common sense. So you have attention, you get conversions. Everybody gets this, hopefully, right? I believe that's quite simple to understand, and we all agree, right? Now, if we all know this and understand this, why is it that most brand owners struggle to achieve exponential growth with their e-commerce brands? If we know that all we need to get is attention, and if we get attention, we'll be able to convert that attention into sales, why are some people struggling? Meanwhile, there are other brand owners making 7 figures a month, 8 figures a month, like clockwork, like it's just lie, right? Why? Here's why. Brand owners, with or without the help of traditional marketing agencies, implement paid acquisition, paid ads strategies to attract attention and drive conversions. An entirely reasonable and understandable approach. Investing in paid ads is the fastest way to access attention you're looking for, right? Now, but where most brand owners go wrong is thinking that investing more money in paid ads or paid acquisition to get more attention will result in an increase in conversions too, right? So they think that spending more money on ads will lead to more sales, right? Now, while there is some truth to that, obviously, if you increase your budget, you reach more people, you get more sales, right? Right. So there is some truth to that. That is true, right? If you have a 10K budget daily and you go to from a 10K budget daily to 20K or 30K daily budget, you will get more sales for sure if you can keep your CPA below break even. And we'll get to that in a second. But if you can keep your CPA below break even CPA, right, and you stay efficient, you still be profitable. Amazing. We all win. But the reality is, investing more dollars on paid acquisition is simultaneously increases your CPA, which is what I'm saying right now. If you can keep your CPA low, investing more dollars on paid acquisition simultaneously increases your CPA, cost per acquisition. Your CPA or cost per acquisition is the amount of money required to generate a single sale through a paid advertising platform, right? So how much does it cost you to generate a sale on an advertising platform like Meta or TikTok, right? Now, put in a formula, CPA equals total ad campaign cost, so that's the ad budget, right, divided by the number of conversions, right? Now, do not confuse your CPA with your CAC. CAC is the total, as we said earlier, CAC is the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer. So it's the combined amount of money that you've spent to generate all the sales that the average customer makes over their lifetime, right? That's what CAC is. Now, CAC, the way you work out CAC is blended CAC, right? Times average number of purchases made by a customer, right? So that's how you work out. So like I said, so blended CAC, we'll get to what blended CAC. Blended CAC is equals total marketing spend divided by the total number of orders. So whatever you spend and how many divided by the orders you get, so that'll be the blended CAC. So if you spend 1,000 and you get 10 orders, that's $100 or pound CAC or blended CAC, right? Now to get CAC, it will be blended CAC, which will be that'll be $100 times the number of purchases, right? That'll be your CAC, right? So once again, to make this simple, I know this is some of you might be watching this thinking, what the hell? Like, it's simple. Stay with me. Blended CAC equals total marketing spend. So if you spend 1,000, right, and you get 10 orders, so 1,000 divided by 10 is $100. That's your blended CAC, right? Now to get your CAC, you have to essentially multiply your blended CAC times the number of purchases made by an average customer. So let's say the average customer makes 3 purchases, and your blended CAC is $100. Then your CAC, your CAC would be $300. So that's 100 times 3 purchases made by your average customer. That's your CAC, right? Very simple. Stay with me, right? Now, total marketing spend. Let's define. This is why I said you shouldn't just be focusing on ad spend, the money you spend on ads, because when we look at business growth, we're not just looking at what's happening in the ad account. We're looking at the business holistically, right? Now, total marketing spend equals every dollar spent with the intention of generating online sales. This includes ad spend, UGC creative costs, influencer campaign costs. If you have, I don't know, if you run an email and you have email software, all the dollars you spend on generating online sales it goes towards total marketing spend. It goes towards that, right? Anything you do to generate sales online, total marketing spend, right? Now, you're assuming that you only sell products through online, or through digital, right? Obviously, if you have physical stores, then your marketing spend is going to be higher, right? Because you have physical stores and stuff like that. You still have to do billboards and radio and TV, right? To be a bigger brand, right? But for most e-commerce brands, especially if you're watching this video right now, you're probably getting customers through social or online digitally. So let's keep things simple. Your CPA is included in the total marketing spend of your e-commerce brand. And that's why if your CPA increases, your CAC naturally goes up with it. I think that's quite simple, right, to understand. If your CAC goes up, it will have a negative effect on the lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio that we previously talked about, right? And as I said previously, we want an LTCM, lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio of at least 3 to 1, because if the contribution margin you earn from the average customer is less than 3 times the total marketing spend required to generate all those purchases made by the average customer, your profit margins will be too thin to reinvest in growth, leaving your brand in a suboptimal position for exponential scaling. You won't be able to scale without profits, right? So you have to make sure that your lifetime contribution margin is higher than your CAC. Otherwise, you can't scale, right? Now, here's a diagram to illustrate the effect of CPA has on your lifetime contribution margin. As you can see, on the x-axis, we have cost per acquisition, and on the y-axis, we have lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, right? And as you can see, as the cost per acquisition increases, your lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio goes down. That's a trend line. That's shown by the red line. That's a trend line, right? That shows you what happens, right? As cost per acquisition increases, right? So obviously, the sweet spot, as we spoke about earlier, is 3 to 1. That's the sweet spot. That's the sweet lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, 3 to 1, right? Below that line, you start to get unhealthy conversions, right? Which is you get in conversions that make you less profitable, essentially, right? These conversions negatively affect your profitability and sustainability of your brand, right? We do not want this for obvious reasons, right? Now, the graph visually demonstrates how important it is to manage CPA in order to maintain or achieve the target lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, 3 to 1. The steeper the decline in lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio shown by the trend line as CPA increases, the more critical it is to manage CPA to keep the business in a profitable and sustainable state. There's a sweet spot where you're investing enough money into paid advertising campaign to get healthy conversions, but not so much to the point where you're overspending and becoming less efficient. And that's the point I'm trying to make. And to add to that, it's okay to become inefficient, right? If you're doing something that we're about to talk about in a second, right? Because becoming inefficient is something that normally it happens, right? You can't always aggressively scale without becoming less efficient. It usually happens, right? It usually happens as you scale, right? You're reaching colder audiences. I'm not going to get into that right now, but you're reaching colder audiences, and obviously those audiences don't know about your brand. They don't even know they have a problem. I don't want to get into the technicalities, but the point is, as you scale, you become less efficient, right? So that's okay, right? But you have to manage it. You have to make sure that you're not going into the point where your lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is suffering as a consequence of you increasing ad spend and increasing your CIP, essentially cost per acquisition, right? Or mismanagement of your cost per acquisition, right? Now, why does investing more dollars on paid advertising simultaneously increase your CPA? Why does this happen? When you increase ad spend, which is the amount of money you decide to invest in paid advertising campaign, ad platforms have to stray away from the ideal segment of your target market. The larger the ad budget or ad spend, the larger the required audience, right? So that means the more money you spend, the more people Facebook or TikTok has to try and find, right? Now, therefore, the further you move away from the high purchase intent segment of your market. So that means you move away from the people that really have purchase intent that want to buy right now. So people that might be considering a purchase or might not even be interested at all, right? So the more money you spend, the more you start to reach these kind of people that are not really ready to buy today, right? Which is what drives up the CPA, right? Because they don't have purchase intent, right? So this is what drives up cost per acquisition, as more effort or money is required to convert audiences with a lower purchase intent, as I just said, right? Check this out. This diagram shows what happens to your CPA on ad platforms like Meta, TikTok, etc. as you increase your ad budget or ad spend. Let me click this and open this up. I'll show you guys. This is very important. This essentially sets the foundation for everything we do at IDMA. So it's very important that you guys understand this, right? Because if you get this and you behave in a way that is aligned with this, you will experience growth. It's just inevitable, right? So anyways, as I said, so this essentially just shows that there's a pool of people that have high intent. a pool of people that have mid intent, and a pool of people that have low intent. And of course, as the arrow shows there how high your ad spend is. After you go past this point, essentially this point of ad spend, you go to mid intent, which means that your CPA is increasing, right? The higher your ad spend is, the colder audiences you'll be reaching, essentially. Like the more people that have a lower purchase intent that you'll be reaching when you increase ad spend, right? If ad spend goes above this point, you start experiencing diminishing returns. Now, on this side, it shows you what happens in a more, in a graph. Like on the x-axis, we have ad spend. On the y-axis, we have cost per acquisition now. So as ad spend increases, right, you start to leave the high purchase intent section, which is this, right, this part, to mid intent, which essentially, as you can see, CPA starts to rise when you go to mid purchase intent, and when you even increase ad spend further, right, you go to the low purchase intent segment of the market, and obviously your CPA skyrockets, right? So I think this is quite easy to understand. This graph makes it very easy for you guys to understand. So I just created this so you guys would see it visually, right? Because obviously when I explain stuff with words, it might not click in. This explains it. So as ad spend goes up, you reach colder audiences, right? People that are less likely to convert today, right? And as you increase ad spend, your cost per acquisition goes up, right? Because obviously you're reaching people that are less likely to convert today. Now, and that happens as you scale, right? Scale your ad spend. Now, increasing ad spend does lead to more sales, but only up to the target market segment saturation points. Once you stray away from the high purchase intent customers, you enter a stage of diminishing returns, right? Which is what I said earlier. Once you stray away from the audiences that are more likely to purchase today, you start experiencing diminishing returns because you're reaching people that are not ready to buy yet, right? So your CPA goes up, right? Significantly. Now, diminishing returns means that each dollar or pound you invest at this point will be bringing you a lower and lower return on investment. So you're investing more money, great, but each dollar you spend now brings you a lower return, right? And that's what's crazy, right? So in other words, as your cost per acquisition increases, the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer, CAC, rises, which gradually reduces the lifetime contribution margin you earn from each customer, thereby eating into your overall profitability. At this point, you could say, you guessed it, unhealthy conversions are taking place, right? Now, to summarize this, when you focus on ROAS and increasing your ad spend to achieve quote unquote a higher ROAS and scale your e-commerce brand, you're gonna experience diminishing returns because as you scale ad spend, your CPA will naturally go up because you're reaching colder audiences, right? To summarize that. So what that tells you essentially is that's not the way to go. In simple layman's terms, that's not the way to go. You shouldn't go that way. Let me show you the way you should go, right? If you want to grow your e-commerce brand. Now, this is optimizing for healthy lifetime contribution margin to CAC approach. This is our approach, right? Now, which is proven. Now, if acquiring more customers by increasing ad spend becomes more and more expensive over time because of the diminishing returns, right? What should a brand owner do to keep growing their e-commerce brand once they reach this stage of diminishing returns? What should you do? Should you stop ad spend? Should you continue to increase ad spend even if you're getting less money for every dollar you put in? What should you do when you get to that diminishing return point? What should happen? What's the next step? What's the next move? What's the next play? What we're doing? You know what I'm saying? Let me explain what we're doing. Let me show you the best approach to achieve exponential growth with your e-commerce brand. We are going to be optimizing for a healthy lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, our preferred approach at IDMA. Ideally, you would want to acquire customers through paid acquisition platform because this is the fastest way to predictably, as we said earlier, predictably access attention and create brand awareness. But instead of just increasing ad spend beyond the target market segment saturation point and experiencing diminishing return, instead of just doing that, right, in an attempt to get more conversions, you should have an additional system or mechanism to retain the customers that have previously made a purchase from your e-commerce brand and encourage them to convert more times or to buy more times. So instead of just spending money to the point where you're getting diminishing returns and just doing that. In addition to that, we're going to add a second system to retain customers that have already made the first time purchase and get them to make a second time purchase, third time purchase, fourth time purchase, fifth time purchase, etc., etc., etc. Right? And your business doesn't have to be your business model doesn't have to be recurring, i.e., it's a subscription, business model. It doesn't have to be that to still make this work. Of course, it would be easier if it was a subscription based, model, right? Because it's easier. You just build them every month, right? It's relatively easy, right? Right, it's easier, right? But then you have to worry, at that point you have to worry about churn, right? Not losing customers, right? But the point is, even if you don't have a subscription-based business model, you can still make this work. So you can still make customers come back and buy from you, right? So you have to get a second system in, not just increase ad spend beyond diminishing returns. You have to get a second system in to retain customers and get them to buy again and again and again. Now, at IDMA, we simply call this system the retention system. The retention system is crucial because it increases the number of conversions your e-commerce brand generates, which forces down the blended CAC and ultimately reduces your overall CAC as well, right? Remember, let me give you an example. This is going to make it very simple, right? This is where I showed you earlier. Now, blended CAC, overall cost of generating a sale, right? Blended CAC and CPA are different. CPA is the cost of generating a sale in the ad account, right? Just in relation to your ad spend, right? So how much is it costing you in ad spend to generate each sale? Blended CAC is your overall business cost to generate a sale. Factoring in UGC creative cost, influencer campaigns, factoring all of that in, your overall cost to generate, your actual cost of generating a sale, realistically speaking, right? Now, that equals total marketing and sales expenses divided by exactly that. So total marketing and sales expenses divided by the number of conversions. That's what I just said right now. So overall, right? Now, so if total marketing and sales expenses equals 10 and number of conversions equals 2, this is simple math. You can't get lost. Like if total marketing and sales expenses equals 10 and number of conversions equals 2, blended CAC would be 5, right? 10 divided by 2 is 5. Right? Now, but if total marketing expenses equals 10 and number of conversions equals 5, blended CAC will be 2. So if we implement a retention system and we get 5 conversions instead of 2 conversions, we reduce, we force down the blended CAC, which forces down your CAC and gives you more margin. And more margin means more profit. If you don't implement the second system, you won't get additional conversions just as easily. You can, if you run retargeting campaigns, but those are going to be very expensive. And that's going to be eroding your profit margin, believe it or not. Right? You can still do that as long as you have a second system that retains customers and generates sales at a lower cost, essentially. Right? Now, without the retention system, you won't have a way to reduce your blended CAC. You just won't. This means your CAC will keep increasing, causing your contribution margin to shrink over time. Now, to put this simply, without the retention system, your poor unit economics won't allow you to achieve exponential growth with your e-commerce brand. However, if you have the retention system in place, you can continue to increase ad spend beyond the target market segment saturation point. So even if your ad account is saying, oh, you're not getting a ROAS, you're not getting a return, you're not getting a return on ad spend, oh my God, you're unprofitable. Facebook, Meta, they don't know what your business numbers actually are. They just know what you're spending on the ad account and what you're getting in return. They don't know what's actually going on the back end, right? So even if your ad account saying, oh my God, you're getting a 0.5 ROAS and you're unprofitable, this, that, oh my God, you know your numbers. You know what's happening on the back end. You know you're still profitable, even if the ad account doesn't show it, right? Now, if you implement a retention system, of course, right? This is not just, it doesn't happen magically, right? Now, without the retention, however, if you have a retention system in place, you can continue to increase ad spend beyond the target market segment saturation stage. This is because although your Meta ad account or whatever ad platform you're leveraging for paid acquisition tells you that you're becoming less efficient, less profitable, or experiencing diminishing returns, your blended CAC will be significantly lower due to the additional conversions you're able to get thanks to the retention system, which means that your overall business health right, will be great. So essentially, forget about the ad account, worry about your business, not the ad account. Ad account is meant to help you. You're not meant to be obsessing over the ad account. The ad account should be helping you, right? Your business objectives, which is profit, right? Now, remember, these ad platforms only know how much your ad budget is or ad spend is, or how much revenue you're generating from these ads, which is a ROAS essentially, right? These ad platforms do not know how much the average customer is worth to your e-commerce brand, lifetime contribution margin, and they do not know what the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer is, CAC. Remember, CAC is not customer acquisition cost. CAC is total marketing spend to use to generate the sales made by the average customer. That's what CAC is in e-commerce space. Customer acquisition cost in the e-commerce space does not exist. It doesn't exist. And I'll tell you why it doesn't exist in a second. I'll give you an example, a very vivid example in a second, right? This will make it crystal clear why it doesn't exist, right? Now, so stay with me, right? This is why, as I said, lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is the metric you really need to be looking at to judge how well your e-commerce brand is performing, not ROAS. Because ROAS could be, the ROAS in your ad account could be saying 0.5, but if you know your numbers, your business numbers, you can still be profitable, even if your ad account is telling you that you're not. If you know your numbers, your ad account is just, forget your ad account, essentially. Your ad account is just a way to get customers, get first-time purchases. And if you know your business and you know your numbers, and you're getting extra conversions in the back end, you're getting repeat purchases, right? You're retaining these customers, and you're getting extra conversions, forget what Meta say. Don't worry about Meta or TikTok. Don't worry about them. Just keep generating. Your business is a money printing machine. Remember, all these marketing methods, TikTok ads, Google ads, Meta ads, Bing ads, Twitter ads, Snapchat ads, Pinterest ads, all of these are just tools that you can use to make to grow your business. They don't dictate your business moves. As long as you know your numbers and you know that whatever's going on on an ad platform is serving your business, that's what you need to worry about. Don't worry about, oh yeah, my ROAS. Obviously, if you have a retention system, obviously if paid ads is your only way to acquire customers, then worry about it. You need to be profitable, right? But understand that you're gonna be limited at some point. If you want to really scale, you need to have a retention system. The biggest brands have a retention system. The biggest brands have a retention system. They're not playing around. They're not just focusing on ad platforms, right? They have a retention system because they want to scale aggressively. So even if their ad account is showing ridiculous, stupid numbers like you're not profitable, they know their business numbers and they know that it's still profitable because they're getting extra conversions on the back end. So that's that. Now, as a quick side note, this is why investors will never ask about your ROAS. An investor will never sit down with you and say, "What's your ROAS?" They'll never do that because they don't care what the ROAS is. They only care about what your lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is. That's what they care about. How much profit are you making in this business? What's your operating profit? That's all they care about. They don't care about your ROAS. What's your operating profit? What's your EBITDA? That's what they care about. That's the question that they're going to be asking you. What's your customer lifetime value? Like how much do customers spend with you? And how much of what they spend with you do you keep, which is the lifetime contribution margin, right? How much of that do you actually keep? Right, of course you have to, obviously with the lifetime contribution margin, that's obviously what you use to cover operating costs, right? And then after that, you have EBITDA, right? But I don't want to get into the technicalities. The point is, lifetime contribution margin is what you're looking for, right? Because your operating costs are relatively stable, anyways. Every month is relatively stable, most cases, right? So that's not something that's going to be fluctuating like your marketing spend or fulfillment, shipping costs. They don't fluctuate as much. Operating costs doesn't fluctuate as much in most businesses, in most e-commerce brands, anyways. It's quite stable. Right, so, but I digress. Point is, ROAS doesn't actually tell them the state your business is in, so they don't care about ROAS. Investors do not care about ROAS. I don't even care about ROAS, to be honest with you. I know I showed you examples and I showed you results that we achieved at the beginning. That's just to show you that we know what we're doing, right? We're not stupid. We know exactly what we're doing, right? You know what I'm saying to you? But it's not the most important thing. This is the most important thing, right? Now, this second approach is the most efficient, predictable, and sustainable, and of course, profitable approach that brand owners should adopt to achieve exponential growth with their e-commerce brands. Attention gets you conversions, and if you're able to retain these customers that basically made a purchase with you, you get more conversions. And this is exactly how you scale your e-commerce brand. You get them in, they make a first time sale, and you retain them and you get them to make more, to buy more products or buy the same product more times, right? And that's how you scale exponentially. Because the very act of doing that forces your blended CAC down. So your cost to your overall cost to acquire or to generate a sale is lower. It has to go down. When you're getting more conversions, it's just it's maths. You're getting more conversions, your cost to generate a sale has to go down. You become more profitable, you have more profit. Now, moving on. Benefits, your lifetime contribution margin, as we said, dramatically increases because you're making more money from the average customer. Your CAC decreases significantly because more conversions are taking place. 3, your EBITDA can grow exponentially if your revenue grows exponentially and your OPEX remains relatively stable, which in most cases it is. Most e-commerce brands have a relatively stable operating expense, operating expenses, right? They have a relatively stable. In case you don't know what EBITDA is, which is ridiculous, right? You should know what EBITDA is, right? Class profit. Now, long-term consequences of each approach. This is the consequence of optimizing for just ROAS, long term. So if you just focusing on ROAS, this is what you're gonna be. This is what your business is gonna look like. If you're just focusing on ROAS, let me zoom in, show you guys. Right. So the total amount of revenue generated by the average customer is gonna be that. Then the total marketing spend required to generate all the purchases made by the average customer is gonna be that. And this is what you're gonna have left, basically. Total amount of contribution margin generated by the average customer. This is what you have left to play with. This is all you have left to reinvest in the business and scale. This is what you're gonna have if you focus on ROAS. Now, let me show you what you have when you focus on lifetime contribution margin to CAC. This is what you have, right? So you have total amount of revenue generated by the average customer, the green line, right? And the red line, total marketing spend required to generate all purchases made by the average customer, that'll be the red line. And this in the middle is what you actually have to take out and reinvest into the growth of your business. This much more. Because you're getting extra conversions. Your CAC is lower. You have more profit. You have more money to play with. To go back. And things are, once you get to this point, you basically become a Federal Reserve. You basically become a central bank. You're just printing cash. You're taking money out, spending again, and getting a bigger return. If every time you put $1 in, you get $10 back out or $20 back out, at that point you're printing cash. If $1 gets you $20, you're printing money. You're basically a central bank. Even better than a central bank, because central banks don't even have to think; they just print it. But anyways, let's continue. All right, I digress. Key takeaway here is that unless you leverage this second approach, you will always have limited growth because spending more dollars on paid acquisition, brackets paid at, beyond the target market segment saturation point, as I've shown you earlier, leads to diminishing returns, right? If you just focus on paid acquisition and you're spending more, you're gonna get diminishing returns and you're gonna have less profits for the more money you spend, essentially, right? And that's not what you want, right? You want more profit, not less profit. You want efficient profit. You want more, as much profit as possible, right? Now, and these diminishing returns lead to lower contribution margin, which leads to potentially going out of business because you won't be able to cover the business operating expenses of your business, and you won't be able to reinvest. You're out of business, basically. You will only be able to achieve exponential growth when you optimize for a healthy lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, at least a 3-to-1, and that can only be achieved at scale through the addition of the retention system, because this system encourages customers to repeatedly buy more from you, which increases your lifetime contribution margin and reduces your CAC at the same time. Now, this second approach is what we specialize in at IDMA, and it's essentially the foundation of our IDMA growth infrastructure. So this is why our growth infrastructure was built. It was built based on this thesis, this ideology, this way of looking at the e-commerce space. This is the way we look at the e-commerce space. This is what we believe. And this is why, this is what we built the IDMA growth infrastructure around. This is why. Our growth infrastructure has to be aligned with this because this is what we believe, right? And we'll go through our growth infrastructure in a second, right? Now, As I said previously, I said to you, CAC in the e-commerce space doesn't exist. This is why. Now, lifetime contribution margin versus CLV. In the e-commerce space, in the e-commerce direct-to-consumer space, every sale you make costs money. Follow me. In the e-commerce or direct-to-consumer space, every sale you make costs money. Even in the unrealistic case where every customer constantly came back to your store and made a purchase without you having to market your e-commerce brand at all, you have to remember that every physical product costs money to produce and deliver to the customer. So even if you didn't spend any money on marketing, every product you sell costs money to manufacture, to create. You're a physical goods business. E-commerce, as an e-commerce brand, you're selling physical goods, right? As a direct-to-consumer brand, right? You're selling physical goods. You're selling these things cost money to make. Apparel, skincare products, beauty products, whatever the case may be, supplements, this costs money to make. So even if you didn't spend any money on marketing, you still have a cost, right? Every single time you sell a product, every product you sell has a cost. Every single unit you sell has a cost. Now, you have to remember that every physical product costs money to produce and deliver to the customer. This is why throughout the growth thesis section of this training, we've been talking about the lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio and not the CLV to CAC ratio. Now, I'll give you a real life example in a minute so that you can see the difference in terms of numbers. Now, the CLV to CAC ratio only takes into consideration the blended CAC, right? Remember, blended CAC is total marketing spend divided by the number of conversions you get, right? CLV to CAC assumes that you only have to incur one-time cost, and every other sale you make is 100% profit. And as we just said, every unit costs money to make. So even if you didn't market, even if you didn't spend any money on marketing, if you sell a unit, that still costs you money. It costs you money to make that product. So there's no such thing as you spend one time and then you get every sale you make after that is profits. It's just pure profit. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, right? So CLV to CAC ratio assumes that only takes into consideration that blended CAC, or as most marketing experts would say, customer acquisition cost, and assumes that the value you are able to extract from the average customer comes at no additional cost to the e-commerce brand. And that's not true, because every unit costs money. Every unit costs money. So there's no such thing as I spend this money, I get a customer, and the customer doesn't cost me any more money to get them to buy again, and the product doesn't cost any more money. Every product you sell has a cost. And you also have a cost to acquire a customer, to generate a sale, right? Or to get a customer to buy again and again and again. There's still a cost attached to that. You don't spend money to get a customer and they just come back by themselves and buy again and again and again without you having to spend. And even if that's the case, you shouldn't assume that. And I'll get to that in a second. Now, while this may be the case for SaaS companies like Netflix, this is certainly not the case for e-commerce or direct-to-consumer businesses. For SaaS companies like Netflix, the additional cost of serving each new customer is relatively low. So they still have a cost, but it's just very, very low. It's like very low. It's basically insignificant for SaaS companies. It's basically the additional cost. They basically have a zero marginal cost of replication. SaaS companies don't really have every customer they acquire has a very small cost to them. Like it's literally just cents, not even that. So, that's SaaS though, right? So, because the business model relies on digital products and recurring revenue, which means most of the costs are upfront, i.e., developing the software and marketing to acquire the user, right? SaaS companies acquire users, right? Now, however, as an e-commerce direct-to-consumer brand, every sale costs you money, every single one. And therefore, you also need to understand how much of that CLV, which is the gross revenue. If you look at CLV is basically the gross revenue per customer, right? Your average customer. The CLV, customer lifetime value, is your gross revenue per customer, essentially. How much revenue does that customer bring to your business? Essentially, pure revenue, gross top line revenue, right? By customer, right? Now, translate into your contribution margin, which is why lifetime contribution margin is vital. CLV, customer lifetime value, tells you how much in gross revenue does a customer bring. Lifetime contribution margin tells you how much of that revenue is profit. right? How much of that revenue, that gross revenue per customer, is actually profit? That's what lifetime contribution margin tells you, and that's why it's the star metric, not CLV, right? Now, aside from the cost associated with making and delivering your physical products to a customer, right? So we've established that every sale you make has a cost attached to it, right? From actually manufacturing the product, right? Now, here's where CAC comes in, because a lot of people think that CAC in the e-commerce space, like CAC actually exists in the e-commerce space, and it doesn't. It doesn't, because every sale costs money to generate. You still have to spend money to generate sales. Marketing, you have to spend money in marketing to generate sales in the e-commerce space. Here's why. Now, aside from the cost associated with making and delivering your physical goods to a customer, you also have a blended CAC, or a customer acquisition cost, right? Attached to every single transaction you make as an e-commerce brand. Consider a SaaS company like Netflix, which acquires customers or users. Like I said, they acquire users, right? Through marketing, of course, right? And charges them on a recurring basis each month, which means they don't have to spend any more money on marketing. Their users get automatically billed every month. Netflix bills you every month automatically. They don't have to remarket to you. They don't have to do anything. They just automatically bill you every month, right? Now, this model means Netflix doesn't have to invest additional resources to encourage repeat purchases from those customers, while also sidestepping any cost associated with delivering its product. Because number one, once they get you, they don't have to spend any more money to get more money from you, because they automatically bill you every month. Every 28 days, they bill you, right? So you don't have to spend any more money to market to you. They've already got you. They've acquired the user. That's why customer acquisition cost makes sense, because once they spend money to acquire the user, right, they don't have to spend any more. They've acquired that customer. In SaaS, Netflix, SaaS, as a software company, essentially your tech company, right? They have digital goods, and their products they offer digital goods. They offer films, movies, right? That is a digital product. It has a virtually a zero cost of replication, zero marginal cost of replication. So they don't spend any money to essentially deliver more films. Like obviously they do, but their cost is basically zero, and it doesn't go up in relation to how many users they get. If they acquire 20 million users this month, their cost of delivering the product doesn't go up. The marginal cost of replication is very small per customer, right? So it's basically virtually zero, right? And that's for, again, Netflix, no e-commerce brands that sell physical goods. Now, in contrast, in the e-com direct-to-consumer industry, it's not just about the initial sale. There are ongoing marketing efforts and costs involved in maintaining customer relationships. Even if you stopped running ads, started leveraging influencers, and started managing organic social media accounts on your own, these efforts are not without cost. Your time has value, and it contributes to your overall marketing expenses. So even if you stop running ads, you're still doing organic posts and paying for influencers. Those things still have a cost. There's still a cost attached to those things, right? So it's still marketing. Now, if every transaction in the e-com direct-to-consumer industry has a customer acquisition cost attached to it, right, associated with it, right, because obviously, as we said, you still have to spend money to market and generate sales. You don't spend money, generate a sale, and get more sales from that customer at no additional cost. That doesn't happen in the e-commerce space. In software, yes, because once you acquire the user, they get automatically billed. But as an e-commerce brand, you don't have that. As an e-commerce brand, you still have to spend money to generate more sales. You still have to continue to market. And this diagram is going to show it. Now, here's a diagram to visualize it better. Let me zoom in so you guys can see this, right? Now, as you can see here, as a SaaS company, right? Customer A, you might be maybe any SaaS company, let's say Netflix, right? They might be marketing through email and SMS, paid advertising, organic content, whatever the case may be, right? The point is they're marketing somehow. They're spending money on marketing, right? But once they acquire the user, right, which is CAC, right? That's the total marketing spend to generate this every sale that every user makes, right? Or every time to generate all the money that each user they acquire makes. That's what CAC is. Total marketing spend to generate all the sale that the average user makes, essentially. That's what CAC is. Once they acquire the customer once, they don't have to spend any more money, because every 28 days, boom, 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 automatically. Every 28 days they get billed automatically. They don't have to spend any more money to generate more sales. Whereas in the e-commerce space, you do, because you don't have a recurring. Now there might be some e-commerce brands that have a recurring based business model, and that's different. Most e-commerce brands are reoccurring if they have a good product. Obviously, people come back and buy more from them, right? You might buy a bottle of water today and buy the same bottle of water tomorrow, right? That's reoccurring, not recurring. There's a difference. Recurring means you automatically build every month, or every quarter, or every 3 months you get billed automatically, or every month, right? Or every week. The point is you get billed automatically. You don't have to. The company does not have to market to get you to buy again. You get automatically billed. It's a subscription, like Spotify, like Netflix. As an e-commerce brand, most e-commerce brands don't operate like that. They don't operate like that, right? So most e-commerce brands, the way they work is they'll send out an email, generate purchases, boom. Then they'll do ads and generate a second purchase from that customer, right? Customer A, same customer, right? Same customer will convert from paid advertising, same customer will convert from email marketing, same customer will convert from organic content. And all of this is ongoing cost. These are all ongoing marketing costs. You don't get this customer to buy from paid advertising and not spend any more money to get them to buy through email, because you're spending money on email. So you're spending money on email, organic content, and paid advertising. So you're spending money to advertise, right? So that customer, to generate a sale from that customer, costs you money. Whereas the SaaS, they do it once, they acquire the customer, and then they get automatically billed. That's a SaaS, that's Spotify, that's Netflix. They get automatically billed. You don't have to market to that customer to get more money out of them. As an e-com brand, you do, because you're sending out emails, you're sending paid advertising, running ads, you're doing organic content. You're still marketing to generate sales from that same customer. Now you might say, well, my customer buys one time, they see an ad, they buy one time, and they just come back by themselves. How do you know that? How do you know that a customer buys one time from you and comes back without seeing any ads, or without seeing any piece of content, or without going on Google and seeing an ad? Maybe, okay, could they have to be searching for you in that case? But how do you know they haven't been interrupted, while they were scrolling on TikTok? How do you know they weren't interrupted by your ad, and because of that ad, went and bought a second time? How do you know that? How do you know they didn't buy from an email? How do you know that? How do you know that they just willingly woke up and said, yeah, I'm going to buy from this brand? You don't know that. And even if that's the case, you should still assume that it still costs money to generate second, third, fourth time purchases, because you don't know that. You should still assume it. And that's why we call it blended CAC. Blended CAC is total marketing spend divided by the number of purchases. Because we assume that, cool, there might be some customers that come back without seeing an ad or without seeing a piece of content, which is rare, right? Because most e-commerce brands don't have the level of awareness that a legacy brand like Adidas or Nike has, where, yeah, that could really be the case, right? It could be the case that they didn't even see the ad, they just go and bought Nike trainers or Adidas trainers, right? That could really be the case with brands that have a lot of awareness. But for most e-commerce brands, that's not the reality that they currently live in. It's possible to get to that point, but that's not the current reality for most e-commerce brands. They have to continue to market to generate more sales from that customer. Whether that be email, paid advertising, organic content, you still have to spend money. So all of this to say, there's no such thing as CAC in the e-commerce space. You don't acquire a user, and to continue to get them to spend money without spending any more money. Number one, because your products cost money to manufacture, whereas the SaaS, they have digital products. They don't have to. They have basically a zero marginal cost of replication. So the products basically cost nothing. Like if they have 1 user or 10 million users, it doesn't cost them that much more money, right? Whereas if you get 1 sale or get 10 million sales, you incur a cost. There's a cost attached to all those sales. All the sales cost money, right? And it's a significant amount, right? Obviously, depending on your cost of goods sold and fulfillment costs and all that, right? But there's still cost attached to it. That's the point. And then on 2, you still have to you're still spending money on advertising, right? Ads. You're still doing email and SMS. You're still doing organic content. So all these things have a cost attached to it, right? So to get that second sale, you're still spending money on marketing. So there's no such thing as customer acquisition cost, right? Because you're still spending money on marketing and there's a cost to deliver a product. So there's no CAC. CAC only exists when you're a software business, not when you're in e-com. When you're e-com, there's no such thing as CAC. Now, hopefully that makes sense and everybody understands that in e-com, there's no such thing as CAC. Cool. I got that on my chest now. Let's continue. When you choose to look at when you choose to look at it this way, CAC in e-com blend equals blended CAC times average number of purchases made by the average customer, right? So your CAC will be blended CAC add blended CAC add blended CAC. That'll be your CAC, right? Because obviously every sale costs you money. Every sale costs you're still marketing, so every sale costs money. Basically, when you generate a sale, it's not free. Basically, it's not like you automatically bill people like in software. In e-com, you're actually spending money to generate a sale. So your CAC is not really CAC, right? Your CAC is blended CAC, and blended CAC, which is essentially total marketing spend divided by number of conversions, right? So this is the way you should be looking at CAC in e-com, right? Blended CAC times average number of purchases made by the average customer. That's how you should be looking at CAC. Now, additionally, working out your lifetime contribution margin might be a bit confusing. Made a mistake there. But don't worry, we'll be going through an example right now. On a unit economic level, lifetime contribution margin equals CLV minus brackets, total cost, brackets, and then inside that brackets, total cost of delivery plus CAC times average purchase frequency, brackets. Now, the simple way to look at that is lifetime contribution margin equals CLV minus total lifetime cost, which is obviously this part, right? Total lifetime cost is this whole part, right? Now, okay, so let's just go with a simple maths example. This is how it's very simple to work out lifetime contribution margin, right? Now, this is obviously it's a lot more complicated than this, right? But this is just a simple example to make sure everybody understands it, right? Now, let's assume you have a product that has a retail price of £80. The total cost of delivery of that product is £40, right? So cost to make the product and deliver it to the customer is £40, right? The average purchase frequency, right, of your store is 3. So the average customer buys 3 times, right? Buys the product 3 times, right? Total marketing and sales expenses in January is 10K plus 1K, 8K, right? That amounts to 20K. So total marketing expenses in January amount to 20K. The total amount of conversions in January that you got in January in a given month, right, is 2,000, right? Now, based on all this information, let's run the numbers. So based on this information, we know that CLV equals retail price, right, times APF, right? So that's, again, CLV is the gross revenue per customer, essentially, right? Or per average customer. The CLV is the gross revenue, generate gross revenue from your average customer, essentially. So that's what CLV is, right? So retail price times APF, CLV equals 240 because 3 times 80 is 240, right? Can we agree on that? 160, yeah, 240, right? So boom. So lifetime total cost of delivery equals total cost of delivery times APF. So lifetime total cost of delivery is total cost of delivery, which is £40 times APF, which is 3. So APF is average purchase frequency. So 40 times 3 is 120. Lifetime total cost of delivery is 120, right? Are you with me? Hopefully you're with me, right? Now, blended CAC equals total marketing expenses divided by the total number of conversions, right? So blended CAC equals 10. Why? Because total marketing expenses is 20K and total number of conversions is 2K. 20K divided by 2K is 10. So the CAC is 10, right? So the blended CAC is 10. So that's that. Now, so we have CLV 240, lifetime total cost of delivery 120, blended CAC 10, right? Simple maths. Remember, in the e-com space, every transaction has a blended CAC associated with it, as we just established. Every transaction has a blended CAC associated with it because you're still spending money to generate each sale, right? Now, CAC equals blended CAC times APF. So that means CAC is 30 because blended CAC obviously is 10 and APF is 3. So 10 times 3 is 30, right? So that's CAC. CAC is 30. Now, total lifetime cost is lifetime total cost of delivery plus CAC, right? And lifetime total cost of delivery, we worked it out before, that's 120. 120 add CAC, which is 30, is 150. So total lifetime cost. So the cost of making the product plus the cost of generating those 3 sales. So this, because also remember in e-com, we have a cost to generate these sales. So the cost of the product, making the 3 units that you sold. So the cost of making the 3 units that you sold plus the cost of generating the 3 purchases from this customer, right, from the average customer, is £150. So that's the total lifetime T code, right? Total lifetime cost, right? Now, lifetime contribution margin equals CLV minus total lifetime cost. Now, CLV, as we worked out earlier, it was 240. Now, 240 minus total lifetime cost, which is 150. Hopefully, this is simple maths. 240 minus 150, that gives you 90, which means that your lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is 90 to 30. Why? Because lifetime contribution margin is £90, right? And your CAC is 30. So your ratio is 90 to 30. Now, if you want to simplify it into the simplest form, it's 3 to 1. It's the same thing. 90 to 30, 3 to 1 is the same thing, right? So this essentially means that your business, in this example, this is simplified example, it means that you're in a good position to scale, right? Because every dollar you spend, you get 3 back. Every dollar you spend, you get 3 back in return. That's what this means essentially. If you spend 30, if you spend $30, you get 90 back, so you get 60 in profit, essentially. Now, an LTCM to CAC ratio of 3 to 1 means that for every pound you invest in marketing, you get 3 back in return. This is an optimal condition for scale. Now, hopefully this all makes sense, right? There's still one small bit that we need to go through quickly, right? But hopefully this all makes sense, right? CAC does not exist in the e-commerce space because every unit you sell, every physical product that you sell has a cost attached to it, because number one, it costs money to manufacture the product, but 2, you're still spending money on marketing, right, in e-com, right, to generate sales. Software companies, once they acquire the user, they automatically bill the user because they have a subscription-based business model. So they automatically bill people, right? Whereas you're still spending money on the marketing to generate sales. And even if you do get customers that somehow wake up thinking about you and go to your store and buy products, which think about that for a second. They wake up thinking about you and they just go and buy without seeing an ad, without seeing a piece of content, without getting an email, without nothing. Now, as I was saying before the camera cut off, essentially, like I said, in the e-commerce space, there's no such thing as CAC because you don't run a recurring business, subscription-based business model. You don't have a recurring business, right? You have a physical goods business, right? You have a reoccurring business, right? If you have a good product, of course, right? So there's no such thing as CAC. Every unit you sell has a cost attached to it, a significant cost attached to it, and you also spending money to generate every single sale, right? Whereas in a software business, subscription-based, business model, and a SaaS, essentially like Netflix or Spotify, they acquire a user and they don't have to spend any more money to get more money out of that customer. They just automatically bill that customer or that user every month. As in e-com, that's not the case for you. There's no such thing as customer acquisition cost because you're not acquiring a customer. You're spending money to generate sales, right? So there's no such thing as CAC in e-com. That's, like I said at the beginning of this section when we started the growth thesis. There's no such thing as CAC in e-com. Now, aside from that, main point is if you focus on ROAS, right, and focus on increasing your ad spend, you can only grow so far. To achieve exponential scale, you have to bring in a second system, which is what we call the retention system. That retention system allows you to increase the number of conversions you essentially, the number of conversions that you get, which forces down your blended CAC. If your blended CAC goes down, your CAC also goes down, which increases the profit margins, right? The amount of profit that you make, right? Your lifetime contribution margin goes up, your CAC goes down, that gives you margin, that gives you profit. So you have to, instead of just spending money on paid ads and getting to the point of diminishing returns and continuing to spend money on paid ads and becoming less and less efficient, to the point where if you were spending $1 on paid ads and getting $5 back, when you get to that diminishing returns point, you're basically spending $1 and getting $2 back. That doesn't make sense. You're losing margin. Why are we scaling just using that? We have to get a retention system to get additional conversions in, and that obviously mathematically forces the CAC down, right? Because you get additional conversions, right? So that said, as I said, focusing on ROAS is not a smart thing to do. You need the golden metric or the star metric is lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio, right? And that's that. Now, CAC obviously in the e-commerce space is total marketing spend used to generate all the sales the average customer makes. That's what CAC means in the e-com space. Because in e-com, as I said previously, as you just said, as I showed you on the screen, in e-com, you have multiple you have multiple transactions. These are not recurring transactions like in SaaS. In SaaS is recurring. In e-com, you don't have recurring. You don't have recurring, you have reoccurring. Right? So if your product is good, people come back and buy again, but they'll probably see an ad or see a piece of content because you're spending money on organic and paid ads. They're not automatically billed, right? Like a software would bill, users, right? In e-com, you don't automatically bill them, right? In most cases, right? In e-com, you don't do that, right? Most e-com businesses have a physical goods product and they sell units, right? So there's no such thing as e-com, as CAC in e-com, right? Now, the last bit I want to go through, something that might be important to know is the average purchase cycle, which is APC. This metric tells you the average number of days or weeks or months that it takes for customers to come back and buy again. The shorter your APC, the faster you attain the full-time lifetime contribution margin from each customer. So obviously, if it takes you maybe 3 months to realize the lifetime contribution margin of each customer, if we can shrink that into a month, we basically realize that profit a lot sooner, right? The faster we can realize profit, the faster we can reinvest in growth, the faster we grow, right? So obviously that's something that we keep in mind as well, and that's something that we focus on. Now, conclusion, to just finish up this section, right? At IDMA, as a growth firm, our primary goal is to literally help you print money legally. As you saw by the example I gave you above, if we can get your e-commerce brand to a place where it can return 3x, 4x, or even 10x of what we spend or invest in marketing, then your business essentially becomes a money printing machine, similar to a central bank. Literally, if you can get $1 in and get $10 back, $10 back, you're printing money. You're basically printing cash at that point. You're spending $1 to get 9 back. You're printing cash. You're printing money, right? So then your business essentially becomes a money printing machine, similar to a central bank. Our second responsibility is to ensure you achieve that 3x, 4x, or even 10x return as quickly as possible by shortening your average purchase cycle, so how fast you realize that lifetime contribution margin, right? Now, in order to make that happen, the first step is to look at metrics that give us an accurate picture of your business's health and performance. This is why we optimize for a healthy lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio rather than focusing solely on ROAS. And that's just the end, right? So lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is the golden metric, it's the star metric. ROAS is just used to judge how good your advertising efforts on an ad platform is. Return on ad spend is just the ad account. CAC takes into account your overall business and marketing expenses, and that tells you it's a more accurate, metric to gauge how the health of your business. Essentially, it's a more accurate metric to gauge how healthy your business is, right? Lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio. That's the metric, right? So it's very important for you to understand that lifetime contribution margin to CAC ratio is the golden metric, and that's what we should be optimizing for. Because if that's the case, then the way we advertise and market our products in e-com has to match, has to align with that ideology, right? And that's the foundation of our growth infrastructure. This growth thesis is the foundation of our growth infrastructure. You have to align with this way of thinking. Otherwise, you won't be able to scale. You'll be limited. You start experiencing diminishing returns, and your profit margins will be shrinking after a certain point. You still make money, but you won't make as much as you could if you focused on lifetime contribution margin, your numbers, your business numbers, not just your ad numbers or your ad metrics, your business metrics. So that's that. Yeah, so that's section 2. I'll see you guys in section 3. And this brings us to the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you're looking for free specific help with your digital marketing efforts, feel free to book a free consultation call with us. To do that, all you need to do is click the first link in the description of this video, choose a date, and fill in a short questionnaire about your business. An DMA Growth consultant will get a call with you to give you advice and actionable steps to solve any specific digital marketing problem you're currently facing with your e-commerce brand. Now, full disclosure, at the end of the consultation call, if our growth consultants determine that your brand meets our required standards, then we might consider a partnership with you. At IDMA, we do not consider a partnership with every brand owner. In fact, we only partner with brand owners that are in a position to rapidly scale their brands with the help of our growth team. With that being said, book a consultation with us to get free specific help with your digital marketing efforts. Thank you for watching this video. Take care.